Happy Taco Thursday, everyone. It's your boy Aaron B. And shout out to our sponsors, What a Clean Solution and SeatGeek. You can see on below to get you a discount and everything. But before we get into it, I got to introduce our special guest, host of Smoke Break on the Buffalo Fanatics Network, my guy Z-Bot. How's it going, Z-Bot?
Aaron, what's good, man? Tacos and touchdowns. I mean, I can't think of anything much better than that. That's the absolute perfect name. And with the intro to go with it, you got it locked down. Now all I need is for your Cowboys to take it easy on us this week, and then I'll be feeling completely good. I got my tacos, my touchdowns. Cowboys take it easy. They got their playoff spot locked up. Let the Bills get in.
I feel you. There's a lot of history with the Cowboys and the Bills and everything, but I want to go into details about that. But since speaking on tacos, we got to talk about what is do you have like a favorite taco place you go to, or is it like and that go to taco as well?
Well, man, that is a loaded question because there's not a single taco I don't like. That is for sure. I don't know how it's one of those foods, and I'm sure you can relate to this. There's some foods that even when they're bad, they're good. Like pizza, you know what I mean? Wings, believe me, wings coming from me near the Buffalo area. There's better than others, but I'm always going to eat a chicken wing. I know a good one from a bad one, but I'm never going to not eat it. But to me, tacos, obviously there's really good ones. And then there's just tacos. I'm eating it either way. So with that, I'd say you're never going to see me turn down Taco Bell. I absolutely love Taco Bell. I eat Chipotle probably once a week. Love Chipotle. But there's nothing better than that hole-in-the-wall local joint, and every town's got one, where you walk in, and there's just you don't know how they do it. You could never replicate it at home. But whatever they're doing it right. And those are my favorite tacos, going and getting them from the local joint, or which has been the big craze around where I'm at recently, and what seems to be everywhere, the trucks, the food trucks. You just do it right out of the thing. You walk up and get them. Those are always good. But I'm a big Mexican food guy. So tacos and everything in between, I'm all over it.
Yeah, you can't beat those hole in the wall in those food trucks. They put their heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
Love. You just can't do, like you said, you can't duplicate this stuff. What do you have like a certain taco you get at that spot?
I always botch the name of it. Is it Barria? The ones with the shredded beef that you dunk into the. Is that what it's called?
It's videos. It took me forever.
Is it what? How do you say it?
Media.
Oh my god, dude! See, that's when you know it's good. When you can't pronounce it, that is when you know it's good. I didn't know what those were, and it's funny because speaking of the food truck, it's the first place I saw it. I didn't know what those were, and then all of a sudden, it seemed like a lot of different places had them, and I had them for the first time probably a year ago, and I'm thinking to myself, where the hell have these been? Because you can't get them everywhere. You can't just go to a chain spot. No one has them. You got to go to a local joint who's got them. So I love those. I'd say if I could choose one, especially right now because I'm starving, if I could choose one right now, I would take that only because not only is it good, but unique. You can't get them everywhere, and I like stuff like that because you only have so many chances to get it, and when you do, it's always good.
I definitely agree. Like, there's literally only 2 spots in my town where they have it. If they don't have it, or you gotta look for the.
But they got to be doing it right though. Those 2 spots, right?
Yeah. Oh. And there's only one of them that actually has it during around this time. The other one, they close around 2, so I can't get my fix then. So if I wanted to get something now, I'd have to go to that spot.
2 in the afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come on. I'll tell you 2 reasons why that sucks. 1, because most people aren't around at 2:00 in the afternoon. 2, if you are around, you eat that at 2:00 in the afternoon, your day's done. You're not going back to work after you house like 6 of those tacos. It's game over.
That is facts because they're gonna be saying, "Oh, where's Z-Bot at?"
Yeah. Well, the problem with me is I'll be with that juice it comes with. I'll be wearing half of it on my shirt. If I go back to work, they're going to tell me to go home and change anyway. So I might as well just take the rest of the day off and go get some more of them.
Yeah, they're going to be saying, were you changing your oil during your lunch break or something?
Yeah, I'd be like, something like that. Yeah. Not the oil you're thinking of, though.
Yeah. that good oil, like you talking about.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. We can almost have a whole series on talking about tacos, but my
Oh, you
next
could.
but my next question is: we're a week away from Christmas. What is your favorite Christmas movie of all time?
Whoa. To me, no debate, no question in my mind. And this is one that people argue with, in general, but I get arguments towards myself about it all the time because I think it's the one movie where the sequel is better than the original. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. That is bar none my favorite Christmas movie.
That's a good one. When you started saying it, I was like, oh, he definitely saying Home Alone.
Well, there's really, and I've thought about it whenever someone gives me crap for it because they think I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the original. I mean, you can't have number two without the number one, but
Yeah.
I can't think of any other movies really where I would prefer the sequel over the original. But there's just something about the fact that it was in New York and the way they utilized it. I loved it so much more than the original, where it's based out of the town he lives in the house for the most part.
Yeah.
Like running around New York and the hotel and the best parts when he's screwing with the hotel workers. It's my favorite. So you don't get that unless you have that element to the movie, which the New York aspect brings. But something about that movie growing up and to this day, it's always been my favorite. And I watch it every year.
That's definitely a good choice. Another thing is about that movie, they don't kind of go into the New York tropes and everything like how typical movies, and not like you saying they got more ground to cover instead of the first one. Like you just was stuck in the house, then you get clips at the airport and everything.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the best because the airport, it makes it seem so much more. It makes it seem so much more realistic to me because it seems like there'd be an easier chance of you getting lost in the airport with that many people that they were with, as opposed to just being left behind at the house. Because once you get on the plane, it's done. In the first one, technically, I feel like you could have spun it back around at some point. You had the time. I never understood, number one, how they get from point A to point B without realizing it all. Number two, you're in the air. And that's when the mother realized, hey, nothing you can do about it then. It's game over. But then the other aspects too that I love, like when he's running around the streets and he gets that he tells the woman that's standing on the corner that they're whatever, I forget exactly what they say, what he says to her, but she turns around and smacks him right across the face so he can get away. It's the best. Like just being in the city in that movie, watching because when I was a kid watching it, like you're just watching this kid take over the city. And at that point, you're just, New York, even as an adult, it's like a spectacle, of course. But when you're a kid, it's like a whole other ball game. And you're watching this kid just dominate the city, doing whatever he wants. So love that movie. All-time fave.
Yeah, that's definitely a great movie. Yeah, I'm probably gonna end up watching it tonight after this show, to be honest with you.
I got to tell you, I was just thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, I haven't got it in yet this year. I only got 12 days. I think I got to get to ripping it soon here.
Yeah, this December is going by fast, just like November. It was like, dang, I was thinking about watching the movie like every other day. It was like, oh, next week is Christmas. What? I guess I better watch something.
I got to tell you, man, if it wasn't for my nieces and nephews who continuously, because they've been seeing Santa everywhere the last couple of weeks, if it wasn't for me continuously getting the pictures sent to me and then with Santa, I mean, I almost need a daily reminder that Christmas is 12 days away. Luckily, I got that reminder yesterday and got all the shopping done because, they have that cutoff with the ship date. I don't want to be the guy who's got to say, hey, it's coming. You ever had that happen where either it happens to you or, someone did it to you where you got it coming. It's not there yet. So you got to give them like a picture of it or you got to show them like a screenshot of it. That's the worst. So thankfully, at least I got that done, which for me is a big accomplishment because I could have easily have forgotten about that and never would have given it a second thought.
Yeah, I got one more gift, and I'm probably gonna have to get it tonight. Just you brought up a good thing. Like, I don't want to be that person. Like, crap, I'm gonna have to send you a picture of the gift.
It's the worst, especially if nobody else forgets to. If you're the only person, then you just, And the other thing too is like what I hate about that part of it is that it's not that you it's not that there was no effort given, because clearly it's coming, but it just makes it seem like you paid the minimal attention to it, and then you're just like, oh shit, I gotta do this. Did it last minute. So it's a bad look. I definitely have done it in the past, and I think the embarrassment of doing it in the past has made me realize you can't do it again in the future.
It's one of those things you live and you learn, and just don't try to do it again.
Yeah, especially as you get older and you got the kids involved. A kid's not going to be satisfied with a picture. You got to have the gift there, or you're toast. So you better figure it out.
You probably got to do a month in advance when it comes to kids.
Oh God,
they're not understanding as an adult. Like, I understand they'll be assumed, but kids like, you forgot about me.
Even the cool stuff. Like it's funny you say that, because I just had this thought yesterday. I have two nieces, but one of them is she's an infant, so she's what I'll just give her whatever. I mean, you better be happy with it. You're 2 months old. But I have my other niece is 5, and then my two nephews, the one's 2 and the one's a year and a half. So the 5-year-old, I got her some like their dolls, and when I got the nephews each, I got the older nephew a Josh Allen jersey and the younger nephew is Stephon Diggs. But I'm thinking to myself, I love that. I love that I'm giving them that because they'll wear it. But then it hit me where I'm like, wait a minute, they're 2 and 1.5. If they opened up this, even though it's cool, it's not like socks, it's still just to them a t-shirt. And my niece is going to open up the dolls, and I'm wondering if I'm going to get in hot water there because she got the toys and they got a shirt. And this whole like, hey, I'm trying to get you on the Bills wave train here winds up derailing because I forget that they're kids when I'm buying the stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, fingers crossed that they're going to be excited and they have like tears of joy of you getting.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to throw in some candy with it too. That way, that way you have something tangible that can soothe it over a little bit. But I will say, last birthday, I got my oldest nephew some Bills gear, and he rocks it all the time. So I think we're in the clear, but we shall see. We'll find out in 12 days.
Fingers crossed for you and everything.
I appreciate it. I don't want to be the bad uncle. I want to be the cool uncle. So I gotta bring it home.
Yeah, absolutely. But my next question is, how did you get into sports podcasts and just sports media in general?
Wow. Yeah. So for starters, just it's easy to do when you're as entrenched as you and I are, and the people who do this are in the sport. I think that people who don't do it, who are fans of sports but not super into it, they always think it's got to be like a crazy amount of work or a crazy thing to do in your free time or whatever else. And I guess that's true to a degree. I mean, it is a lot of work. It does take a lot of time. But when you love it and you're so entrenched into it, it doesn't feel like that. So, that's why I think on the outside, when people aren't necessarily the ones doing it and they know I do, they think it's, the craziest thing. But it gives you that perspective from a lot of different angles where you look at somebody else doing something, you might think the same thing. And that's how it is for them. Not a big deal. So for starters, for me, it's just being a Bills fan forever, being born into it, born and raised right outside of Buffalo. Dad, fan his whole life and passed along to me, and it'll be passed along for generations. So that's how it starts. And then growing up, weird. I was the kid who knew what he wanted to do in probably 5th grade. I knew I wanted to be in sports broadcasting. I wanted to do that in 5th grade, and I wanted to do that when I graduated high school. And I went to college for broadcasting, sports broadcasting, and got my degree in that. And then I've been doing this both during and after graduating. So probably going on at least 5-6 years of doing this. But one of those rarities, I think, just based on everybody I knew, especially as you got into college, people that had no clue what the hell they're doing or wanted to do. And that's totally understandable because that's 99% of people I knew. But they always thought I was kind of nuts for always knowing. I never thought about it like that, but just the way it's always been. So from beginning to end, all the way through, it was always the same. And I'm glad and lucky to be able to be still doing it now. And I love every second of it.
That's one of the main things. You want to find something that you're just strictly passion for.
Yeah.
even though it may seem crazy to others, because I know probably your friends circle, you're probably like the only podcaster in the group, and they're saying, "Dang, you put a lot of stuff into it and everything." But if you enjoy it, you don't really you don't see it as work,
right?
And everything.
And all my buddies are all massive, massive football fans too, and they could do it. It's just the other part of it too is that one, you got to like to talk.
Yeah.
And you got to be willing to talk with others. Like, you know how it goes. At any given time, you could be talking to thousands of people you don't know, and you got to deal with whatever comes of that. And we all know what the internet's like. So there's a million different things that you're kind of grappling with when you do it. So I just think there's an element to it where you kind of just the difference between the people who like want to do that and not. It's just dealing with all the extras. Because my buddies, for instance, they love sports, but they would never want to do this. And I just think that for me, the combination of always wanted to do it and the love of sports just made it easy.
Yeah, it's like this. They don't want to deal with, like when it comes to X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You got to deal with some people saying some crazy stuff to you, but then sometimes the people that say stuff to you, they don't even have their picture on there. They may have like
never.
Yeah, it's usually like I have one person on TikTok say it was like a cheeseburger critiquing me on something.
Yeah,
I'm like, you don't even have a picture. You have like a McGriddle from McDonald's. Yeah, but anybody that said anything to me never had like a picture of themselves. It's always
you know what?
Random things.
It's always the stuff that McGriddle says that hits the worst. You could get 1,000 good comments, but the one McGriddle comment always sticks with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I will say, in to that point, there's one, you got to know what you're signing up for, because sports is it is a natural entity for argument. You can never talk about sports unless you are just so dialed in on the same team with a person. Yeah. You're always going to have either a bias or a different view on something than somebody else. So naturally, you're going to argue just about anything. And when you mix that with the anonymity that the internet gives you, it's insane. But I'll say from my own experience, I've noticed you do get a lot back of what you put into it. I don't argue with people, and I don't seek confrontation. Now, a lot of people online, they're like moth to the flame when it comes to getting in an argument on Twitter. I don't have time for it. But I will say this, my guilty pleasure, I do love reading it. I don't mind getting into the comment section and seeing what's going on, but I like to stay out of it myself.
Yeah, it's like basically reading Jimmy Kimmel's mean tweets, but you're not responding to them. You're just like, oh, that's hilarious what they said. Yeah. I may put a GIF or whatever you want to call it.
It's almost like, you're sitting in school back in the day or somewhere in public, and you just see people going at it, and it's almost like you just have a front row seat, except you get to do it at your own peril. You just scroll and read, and you don't even know what the heck you're getting into at the time. Then it'll hit you where you're like, I just spent 20 minutes watching these two people argue about whether the other night against the Chiefs that was an offsides or not, and then I'm starting to lose my mind. You know what I mean? I'm not even involved in it. I'm starting to lose my mind. So I guess that's just the internet. You know what I mean? Some things never change. No matter how technologically advanced we get, that's never going away.
Yeah, absolutely. My next question is, this is, I feel like I definitely asked a lot of these to a lot of, who is in your Mount Rushmore of all Bills greats of all time?
Wow. Well, so my lifetime or just all time?
Of your lifetime.
Okay, my lifetime. Because I'm born in 97, so I'm cut off on all the Hall of Famers. So I have none of the Super Bowl era teams, none of the heavy hitters. For my lifetime, man, well, Josh Allen's the easiest answer, only because he has saved me from the depths of mediocrity and misery as a fan. I went through, so the Bills, I'm 26. And the Bills did not end their playoff drought until I was a junior in college. I had never seen the Bills play a postseason game until I was of legal drinking age. And granted, they made it with Tyrod Taylor and Sean McDermott, not Josh Allen. But, they made it because the Bengals won on a last-second play in the regular season to knock the Ravens out. and then they would go on to lose without scoring a touchdown to Blake Bortles and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So even though it was amazing, even getting the chance to watch that, it wasn't what it is today, nor would it be had they had gotten Josh Allen. So Josh Allen is my savior when it comes to not only the franchise in itself, but my personal fanhood, because I'd never experienced anything close to what we've experienced since he's come along. So he's easily the biggest head on Mount Rushmore. Fred Jackson would be the other one. I think growing up, Fred Jackson was probably not only one of my favorite players, but maybe one of the best players. The Bills back in the early 2000s, pretty much all the way up till not all that long ago, never had a quarterback. That's why I just, what I just referenced about Josh Allen. Even when Tyrod Taylor came around, he was easily one of, if not the best Bills quarterback, in my lifetime. So to have watched the Bills growing up was to watch pretty bad to at the very, at the peak mediocre quarterback play. But they always seem to have decent running backs, if not really good running backs. Willis McGahee growing up, obviously LaShawn McCoy towards the end, which helped them kind of get over the hump. Travis Henry. But Fred Jackson was always my favorite because he was a mix of just ground and pound, but he also could hit you with the flashy plays too. And he really embodied Buffalo. He lived in a neighborhood. Actually, a friend of mine in college lived right in his neighborhood. So he was just entrenched within the community. I believe he built a house for his mother right next door. So he was always just embodying Buffalo, and he still does today. So Fred Jackson, not only one of my favorite players, but also was one of my favorite, people who, when you think about the Bills, they really shine them in a good light. So I got to put Fred Jackson up there. Man, let's see. I think that I have to go with Kyle Williams for my third spot. He's another one of those guys, and I don't know if this is the same in Dallas for your fan base, but it certainly is for us in Buffalo because we're such a small town comparatively to the rest of the league. Outside of maybe Green Bay and Kansas City, Buffalo is about, as small as it gets when it comes to these cities that have professional sports teams. So it always means a lot to us when a guy just kind of embodies the city, that blue collar mentality, sticks around, and you're always getting 110% from him. And Kyle Williams played his whole career for Buffalo, and he was easily one of the best players on the team throughout. He was a captain for the majority of his time in Buffalo. And I just remember the moment when they did end the playoff drought, which just so happened to be his last season. They had a camera in the locker room when the game ended. And, Kyle Williams was with his kids, obviously had never been to a playoff game. He was with the Bills his whole career, and he's crying. And it just made you want to cry because you feel the same energy that these guys also feel, just in a different way. And when you get that in combination with also being one of the best players, I always love that. So Kyle Williams would be my third one. And then, man, this is a toss-up. I want to go wide receiver somewhere, I think. And maybe I will, only because I think he's one of the coolest dudes. And this is more so based on just a guy that I think overall, when you think about the Bills, this guy just immediately pops to your head if you're a Bills fan, and that's Stevie Johnson. Stevie Johnson was a guy that, when you look back at that time period and the receivers that were in the league then, he wasn't your highlight reel X factor guy that was always going to be a talking point when you're talking about the best wide receivers in the league. But at that time for the Bills, he was this up and comer young dude who was as good as it got in Buffalo in a while. And he was just a fun, charismatic guy who loved being a Buffalo Bill. And he still does today. In fact, I don't think, let me see if I can pan it up or not, but there he is right there up on the wall. And I got that we were doing a golf event, and he was actually one of the members with us doing it. And we got to meet him and hang out with him for a while. And just an all-around awesome dude who to this day still roots for the Bills. And when he was with us, he had some great moments. And as far as my childhood is concerned, he was one of my favorite players. So I know it's a bit of a weird Mount Rushmore, and it's certainly not at the caliber, I think, of what the Dallas Cowboys might be able to put up on there. But I think when I look back on it, that would not only signify some awesome moments for the Bills, but certainly the best times I think I had as far as, having the fandom be put in and represented by the players themselves.
Yeah, when you asked me of people you saw, I wanted to hear that more than because if you say like the ones of all time, like in the past, but you never got to see them, it kind of felt like you had to force these players. You got to be like saying, "Oh, Bruce Smith, Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, and some other guys."
Yeah, you just throw Andre Reed in there, and that's it. All 4 Hall of Famers, and all 4 are the reason they go to 4 straight Super Bowls. But once that ended, which is right around the time I was born, I mean, we had a serious debate one time, and I almost put him on my Mount Rushmore. There's two of these guys. There's 2 guys, and this is how bad it was in Buffalo for so long. We had a serious argument, me and a couple other Bills podcasters. We were doing something similar to this. We were doing like the 10 greatest Bills players since the turn of the century. And I legitimately had said Brian Moorman, the punter, and Ryan Lindell, the field goal kicker. So that is how deep in the trenches I was as a fan for the longest time when you're pinpointing the kicker and the punter. So that's why it's tough to do it during my time period. But like you said, it's more authentic. I think it gives you a look into it outside of what you would hear probably anywhere else from the, the majority of the mainstream type stuff.
Yeah, because I was born in the 1990s, so I can't say the guys that were back in the 70s and 60s with the Cowboys. It's like,
well, you were born into prime Cowboy time, though. You were born into the best Cowboy time.
Yeah, it was a fun ride, even though I was 6 when the last time we've been there. But
listen, 6 is better than being not even a thought in your parents' eye when the Bills were actually doing stuff. So I'll take 6 years old, believe me. I will say, though, it is nice to know if and when, and it's a big if and a big when, they do accomplish what everybody wants in Buffalo. It will be nice to know that I didn't miss out on that. I was old enough, obviously, to be able to experience it.
It'd be nice to see our 2 teams in the Super Bowl. I know it'd be nice to see it.
I'll tell you what, it would. I think, what's crazy, too, is obviously Dallas gets crazy ratings every year. I mean, that's the reason why they play when they play every week. I mean, they are the ratings king. But when Josh Allen rose to prominency, the Bills were doing some of the best ratings in the NFL. It goes Dallas, and then the rest is, up for debate. And I remember back when they played on Thanksgiving, I think at that time it was the highest viewed Thanksgiving game in a while. So you just imagine what the Super Bowl rating would be, not only if Dallas was in it, but of course, Buffalo with their chance to win their first ever. I bet you they'd do a rating they'd never seen before. It'd be wild.
Man, and it's in Vegas too, so imagine all the sports. Hey, I'm just saying we're selling it pretty good. Come on, NFL.
I'll tell you what. Hey, listen, if we're selling it good enough, Aaron, why don't they throw us a couple of tickets? What do you say? How about that? A couple of tickets, and we'll go. I don't care. We'll sit in the. It's kind of like at AT&T there when you got everybody running in for the GA. I'll do that. I don't care. Just throw me in the stadium. That's fine.
Yeah, and get some content and everything else.
Sure, I'll do whatever. I'll do whatever you want. I mean, hell, I'll go there and I'll clean the locker rooms afterwards. I don't care. Just get me in the stadium.
I'll do it too.
Yeah,
I can do laundry
after it. Yeah, sure. I can do laundry. I don't know if I can do it well. Clean everybody's pads. I don't know if they're going to come out the same size, but hey, we can give it a try.
Yeah, hopefully not wearing white. So that's all I'm gonna leave.
Well, more than likely, I would imagine Dallas is wearing white, so I'll let you handle those. That's sure.
Dang, I hope they don't wear. They're my favorite, but if they wear the color rush, I'm in trouble.
Is that the one they wore last week? The all white there, dude. Those are so clean. Those are sweet. I love them. You know what I love about Dallas, and it's like the same with San Fran and Pittsburgh, Green Bay. Nothing ever changed. I love that. When you see some of these uniforms now, where you're just like you look at when Philly wears the Kelly green, and you're just like, why did you ever change it? I love the teams that never went away. Now the Bills went back to similar styles of the 90s, but there was that period where they had the navy blue for like 15 years. It made nobody did. It made no sense. There's no navy blue anywhere in the logo. It made no sense. So I've always loved that about Dallas. And then when you add a new one and it's still as nice as the others, you can't beat it.
Yeah, I like the ones you got now, but like in that mid 2000, early 2000, I wasn't like a big fan of those jerseys.
Amongst Bills fans, man, they are like Well, I got to tell you, I think more than the look, they're hated because the Bills had never been worse in franchise history than when they wore those jerseys, and they were bad forever. That's why I've always said, give me one game where the Bills are playing like the Panthers, and let Josh Allen wear the all navy and just avenge like 15 years of some of the worst football you ever saw in those things. So that way the little kid and me and the rest of all of us who had to watch it can sit and actually see some decent football in those navy blue uniforms.
That would do some,
Well, the Bills,
justice.
It's been pissing me off a little bit because they're like one of the only teams who haven't done an alternate helmet or one of the throwbacks yet. I don't know what they're waiting for. Everybody wants them to bring back the red helmets for a game, and they won't do it. And it's like, hey, it's the easiest thing in the world. Just swap the color out. It's the same logo and everything. But maybe next year, we'll see.
Yeah, it probably will be because I know they're starting to do like a kind of like how the NBA was doing, like you bring out the retro and then bring some.
The NBA got crazy with it though when they started doing the city editions, which some of those are awful. And then they did. Remember when they were doing the long sleeve kits that were essentially like a onesie? Those were terrible. I loved the throwbacks, like you said, like the the old school Nuggets are absolutely incredible. I loved growing up the old school like cyan green Timberwolves jersey. Loved all those, but then they started getting crazy. I'm glad the NFL doesn't do that because it gets to the point sometimes when I'm watching the NBA where I got to look down at the scoreboard and see who's playing because I have no idea what the hell the jersey. Like they'll wear a jersey color some nights, nothing to do with the logo or the color scheme at all.
Yeah, they're pretty terrible this year. It's like you only can find like 3 good ones out of the whole bunch, and then the cord is like not even matching the jersey, so it's just your eyes are getting blinded because the colors are so like some loud colors. And you're like, I'm seeing specs moving.
The in-season tournament when the Lakers had the yellow core, I had to put sunglasses on just to watch it. It was unbelievable. I couldn't handle it. I mean, I loved the in-season tournament. I thought it was awesome. I watched every game. I got a kick out of it. The courts were terrible, and this is coming from somebody who loves creative stuff like that. That was way too much. Color the key or something, not the whole court.
Yeah, like they need to go back to the drawing board next year. And the tournament is a great idea, but the color schemes and all that stuff, it was pretty bad.
Tell you what, that was the best basket. You know it's good when I'm watching the NBA in early December, late November. Because I don't usually start watching heavily until probably the Super Bowl's over. And then I start getting into it. And that's when the teams usually start getting into it. But when they were going at it for a couple weeks there, I loved every second of it. I thought it was great.
Yeah. And that's another thing that they were playing really good basketball. It looked like playoff. Just kind of go to the finals basketball. It didn't look like we're gonna load manage, and my knee's kind of a little sore this game, so I'm gonna call it.
LeBron was playing like 39 minutes, and he was averaging more than he was averaging when he was in his 20s, and they popped champagne afterwards. I'm like, man, this is prime basketball right here. You gotta love it.
Yeah, all those old sportscasters were pissed.
Oh, they hate it.
They're like, why they're popping champagne? It's not the finals.
Those are the same people who think that they should still get rid of the 3-point line, never should have added it. So I don't listen to them. I can't. They hate any progress. They hate it.
Yeah, they hate the 3-point line.
And those are the same people who want to get rid of the tush push too. They all want to get rid of it. They hate any sort of creativity or change. They want everything to be the same. You got to have a healthy median. I like keeping things. It's like we were just talking about, like the jerseys. I like the alterations, but when you start getting too crazy, you're going to lose me. You keep a little of the throwback, you keep a little of the new. It's perfect.
You got to have some fun, but then you got to, like you said, find that healthy medium where you're not going to please both sides, but at least try to get in that right middle.
Yeah, I think the NFL has done a good job, too. I mean, it used to be so bad where you couldn't celebrate, you couldn't wear any alternate uniforms or helmets. So they've gotten better. I think the NBA is the representation of way too far. The MLB is the representation of way too strict. The NFL, to me, has found a pretty decent median. I think they could do a little bit more, but I've been happy with what they've been doing so far.
Yeah, you only can like nitpick with the NFL, but the NBA, oh man, baseball is just feels like they're robots. Like I hit the ball, let me jog.
I can't stand it. I mean, I watch the playoffs, but it's always amazing to me. Everybody I know, like outside of a couple of diehard buddies that I have, and even then, no one's watching every game. But it's like you see Ohtani get 700 million the other day, and it's like, how are they making this money back? Where's the money at? I mean, obviously they're making it because all these guys have the money, they're spending the money, and it never ends. But I think about it when it comes to all the major sports, that is bar none the bottom of my list.
Yeah, and they got the best contracts around.
Oh, it's insane.
You could go to a sports bar, you run into more football fans and basketball fans than you'll see like the small crowd of baseball fans that are watching every 1,000 games that's being played.
Well, the thing that's always different to me is I know a trillion baseball fans, but how many do you know that are like as into it as somebody is into their football team? I know very, very few, if any at all.
I maybe know two.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, Aaron, thank God we're not like that. You imagine doing this, but 182 times a year. I think I'd have had 3-4 heart attacks by now. I don't think I can do that.
Yeah, you basically would have to do a show every day, and then the games are usually during the day too. So imagine you just got to like, I'm gonna take my lunch break. I'm gonna do a show real quick.
I always think the same thing. I'm like, do any of you have jobs? All these baseball fans? I mean, sometimes they're playing at like 10 in the morning, West Coast time. On a Thursday. I'm like, how the hell do you even follow this?
Yeah.
But they do. The money's still coming in. So
man, I would like when baseball season would be over, I would take the biggest break.
Oh my God.
From podcasting.
I hibernate.
Yeah, like, oh, where's Aaron? Like, I'm taking
Who knows? No one knows where he is.
Yeah. You'll see me when baseball season comes around.
Exactly.
Football, you can't complain too much about football. You get one game a week. You can talk about it. Yeah.
It's the one word is urgency. Every game matters as much as the one before it. Baseball, and this is the other problem I have with the NBA. This is why I love the in-season tournament. The NBA, you could still sleep through October and November and win the whole thing, no problem. Baseball, you can sleep for 3 months and win. I mean, you got the who was it this past go around? Was it who was the team who barely got in and made it all the way to the championship series? And then the Dodgers won the most games in the league, right? And they get bounced early. So I've always looked at it and I'm thinking, you play 182 games. One team gets in by 2 games at the end. The other dominates all season, and it's over in 2 weeks. Crazy to me. Yeah. It's the same thing in the NHL. The NHL is more similar to the NBA, but a similar example. It's like the Boston Bruins. They lost like less than 10 games last season, and within a week, the season's done in the playoffs. So I always wish there was more urgency throughout, because I think not only would it be better for the sport, but I think there'd be way more people, heavily invested in it.
Yeah, they'd be more glued in, but they got so many games a week. It's just like, oh, we lost this game, but we could win the next 2 games or so.
And sometimes in baseball, it's like this morning, we lost the game this morning. We got a game though at 4:00 tonight. Maybe we'll win that one. You imagine the Cowboys, you imagine how the Cowboys lose like they did to the 49ers, and then you're like, all right, well, we got a game in 4 hours. We're playing them again. Maybe we'll get them this time. Imagine that. I'm like, oh my God, crazy.
That'd be the worst type of football, because you're just going game on top of games. You'd basically just be picking players from off the couch, because players be all beat up.
You think it's bad now? What is it? 15 backup quarterbacks starting this weekend. You imagine what it would be with double headers? My God.
They'd be calling us to be to be quarterbacks at this point.
Well, hey, Aaron, knock on wood, I'll say this: our 2 teams haven't had any issues in that department.
Oh,
yeah. Thank God, because some of these other teams, watching them when the Bills aren't on, and just watching the slate of games, it's been some rough ball out there the last couple of weeks.
Who's y'all's backup quarterback?
Another Allen, Kyle Allen.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So if Allen goes down, it's toast. It's done. But it's always been like that. I mean, we had Mitch Trubisky last year. I wish we would have retained him, but then, hey, you're watching him in Pittsburgh and he's losing to Bailey Zappi. So at the end of the day, the way I see it, if Allen gets hurt, no matter who's coming in, it's probably done anyways. I mean, we don't have a Cooper Rush like you guys do, who I absolutely love. He went to the same college my sister went to, Central Michigan. So my dad absolutely loves him. Cooper Rush, and it's always fun watching him get in a blowout.
Yeah, he's a fun quarterback, and that had an interesting journey because he went from the Cowboys, had a really good preseason, and once the next year it wasn't that good. Went to the Giants for like a cup of coffee and came back to the Cowboys.
And I still forget you guys got Trey Lance, which is insane to me.
Yeah, I don't get the understanding why we traded a fourth for him, but he's here. That's all I can say.
I just thought the weirdest part about that was that Jerry had said that he didn't even really consult with McCarthy. He just went and did it. I don't know. You know what? I'd rather have Trey Lance as my backup than anybody who's in Buffalo right now. So maybe it wasn't the worst idea in the world.
I looked at y'all roster. I didn't know you had Josh Norman on the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, we've been cycling through some veterans at D-back. I mean, but I got to tell you, Rasul Douglas came out of nowhere and started absolutely balling for us. So sometimes it works. But right now, the Bills have Leonard Fournette, who hasn't even geared up for a game yet. He's been on the roster for 3 weeks. Josh Norman, God bless him, same type of deal. But the Bills have been so banged up on defense, they've had no other choice. They've just been rotating through guys like crazy.
Yeah, I forgot Leonard Fournette's on the team. But the last time I've seen him, he was wearing Hoochie shorts in Buffalo, and I was like,
last time I saw him, he got in person. I'll say that the last time I saw him play in person, it was a Bills-Jags game in Buffalo, and he got into a huge fight with the Bills, and they I forget exactly who it was with, but they took it all the way to the locker room. The whole crowd was getting into it. That's why I thought it was crazy they signed him, because everybody in Buffalo, when they think of Leonard Fournette, they think of that moment.
Crazy things happen. My next question is after the firing of Ken Dorsey in early November, what are your thoughts on innermost seat Joe Brady compared to Ken Dorsey?
Well, so at the time, there was so many issues with the Bills at the time that I had questioned whether it was fair or not to pin the majority of the blame, some people, the entirety of the blame, on Ken Dorsey, because this offense earlier in the season, after losing to the Jets in week 1, where Allen played bar none the worst game of his career, I was at that game. Wish I wasn't, because I'll never forget it. It was just eternally bad. And we're thinking right out of the gates that it's just going to be one of those years. But then they go on week 2, 3, and 4. And I think the margin of victory through those 3 combined games was 130 to 30 something. They dominated. But then all of a sudden, it was just what seemed to be every week, this mediocrity that would just roll over and roll over. And it would either result in a narrowly margined win against a bad team like the Giants, who should have beat us on the last play of the game, the Tampa Bay Bucks, who had a chance on a Hail Mary, the Patriots, who one of their 3 wins this year came against the Bills, another game that I went to, Aaron, I can't believe it. I went to 2 away games this year. Both of them were 2 of the worst games of the entire season. So you were going week to week, and you're thinking to yourself, is it a Dorsey problem? Is it the fact that this defense is so banged up? Is it a Josh Allen problem? Which nobody in Buffalo ever wants to say. They never want to have that conversation. They never want to admit it. I'm sure you deal with that with Dak. I know the criticism Dak gets all the time. There's got to be people out there who defend him to no end. Even like last year when he led the league in picks, there's people who just constantly will defend the guy, even if they're part of the problem. And early in this year, midway through, up until really about the firing, Allen was certainly a major part of the problem, and he still is turning the ball over. He leads the league right now, and I think he's on a 8-9 game streak with turning the ball over. But the difference is that he also leads the league in touchdowns, and you have to take the good with the bad with Allen just because of his play style, because he's going to throw a pick, but then he's also going to make 2 plays that look like they're going to be a pick, but they're the play of the week. So that's understandable, but you still had to be able to sit back and say, man, Allen's not playing well right now, and it's certainly contributing to the problems with this team. So then the Denver Broncos game happens with the 12 men on the field, just an absolute catastrophe, one of the sickening moments of the year for me. And that's when Dorsey gets fired. And I thought that was interesting because it wasn't the fault of Ken Dorsey that there was 12 men on the field defensively. or special teams rather, at the end of the game. Yet that was the straw that broke the camel's back. But the offense had gone week after week after week without putting together a consistent performance. And I had felt that even though it might not be the entirety of Ken Dorsey's fault on offense, could be a variety of factors, including the play of Josh Allen, it just felt like it didn't matter anymore. They absolutely needed a spark. They needed a change. And I know that seems cliche anymore when it comes to these coach firings and everybody says it, but you could see it immediately with the Bills. They went on to score 30 points consecutively for the first time since early in the season, straight after the firing. And you could truly argue that they should be 3-0 since that firing. If it weren't for that Eagles loss where, you're nailing a 60-yard field goal before overtime, the Bills Josh Allen misses Gabe Davis in overtime there, and the Eagles go down and get it. You allow 37 to them, even though you score 30. I mean, how many times do you score 34 and lose? Not very often. So whether it's the scheme of Brady that's better than Dorsey's, or whether it's just an inspiration within the locker room that was much needed, whether that's just a change of tone, I don't know what it is, and I don't think anybody truly does. I don't think anybody can sit back and say the play calling has done a 180 since Ken Dorsey has left, but I've seen different things that, to me, Aaron, it felt elementary the whole year, but they weren't being utilized. Like getting James Cook involved in the pass game, they just weren't doing it. Getting the ball out into the flat, short routes in certain situations where it calls for it, as opposed to running a 20-yard post route on 3rd and 3 and punting the ball. They were doing a lot of that with Dorsey. I just got to say, the one thing since moving on from him that I've noticed, it seems to be more common sense type football. And that plays well for Josh Allen, because the more that you're putting him in situations to have to make the big play, the more likely you're putting this team in a rough spot, because he's going to be susceptible to making mistakes in high-risk moments. You're managing the risk. They're scoring more points, and they are turning the ball over less. You're going to bake in a turnover for Allen pretty much every week for the most part. But when you're able to mitigate that with more points, which they've done, I'm all for it. But at the end of the day, the biggest reason it had to be done was just because something had to be done. And it looks like so far it's worked. And I think it's the reason today they're still alive for the playoffs. I think if they don't make that move, if they stood pat and they just let the woes of the year keep crashing in on them without trying to break that open, I don't even think we'd have a meaningful game this weekend in Buffalo for the Bills.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you brought up some good points. You're seeing them doing more common sense plays, and I like how they're utilizing James Cook.
Yeah.
I've seen last week he was doing like some wheel routes in the passing game and getting involved into the running games. Like, they're utilizing his strengths. When you had Dorsey, I know y'all had like a lot of struggle when it comes to the running game. And we're constantly going through running backs. And now they kind of got a good blend with him and Latavius Murray, who's like 30-something. Like 30.
I was going to say, he's another one of those guys, right? You just kind of grabbed.
Yeah. Get those, and he's getting those short yards, and he's kind of like that goal line back.
Yes.
I think there's another running back that y'all use as well. But
so we had Nyheim Hines, and no longer. And then we have Latavius Murray, who comes in every now and then. James Cook, for the most part, is the every down back, mainly because what they try to do with James Cook essentially is what they've been doing lately, and which is the reason they drafted him. They try to make him more of a, overall asset to the offense, as opposed to just the guy who's going to ground and pound it. Because as you saw last week, he ended up being the leading receiver for the Bills because they completely took away Stephon Diggs, and the Bills currently right now don't have a reliable wide receiver too. I mean, Gabe Davis would be that answer, but he has 3 or so games this season where he doesn't even have a catch. So if you're able to mitigate Stephon Diggs outside of the tight ends, which there's not going to be a whole lot of explosive plays with your tight ends, that is of course until you get to the red zone. You got to rely on it in other areas. So James Cook's been that. But like you said, Latavius Murray, Ty Johnson out of nowhere. And that's the one biggest change I'd say between the Dorsey-led offense and the Brady-led offense that's been the most visible. I couldn't tell you a single snap Ty Johnson had on offense with Ken Dorsey. All of a sudden, Joe Brady takes over, and he was in the rotation as much as everybody. So it is a running back by committee type thing. Damian Harris, I think, is probably the other guy you were thinking of. He's on IR early in the year. But between him, Fournette, Nyheim Hines, who they had and then let go, Latavius Murray, it is almost like this rotating door of guys who are about to retire. But James Cook right now has been, I think, exactly what the Bills wanted him to be. They're just finally allowing him to be that. And before that, they weren't giving him the opportunities.
You're seeing more consistency, and that's one of the things you kind of, I know, like you were saying, you would like to see more consistency from like your other receivers. Like,
sure,
you see like sprints of like Khalil Shakir, and Gabe Davis, but it's not on a consistent base. And like you're saying, Diggs' corners are locking in on Stephon Diggs because they know what type of receiver he can be on the offense.
Well, you probably felt the same way, right? Because it's CeeDee Lamb, and in the beginning of the year, right, Brandon Cooks wasn't doing much of anything at all, and then all of a sudden, he was starting to become a part of the offense over time. Where I thought in the beginning of the year, you hadn't even heard his name. The Bills, however, I look at the wide receiver core for the Cowboys compared to the Bills. I mean, at least I have like Gallup and Cooks, and then of course CD being the one. With the Bills, I mean, I have Diggs, and that's really it. I mean, Davis might be a household name to people who watch the NFL closely. No one else would be able to name a single other receiver on that team for the Bills. And you now have Stephon Diggs with 3 of his last 4 games being under 40 yards. So it's a tough spot to be in right now in Buffalo just because of the lack of options they have for Josh Allen to get the ball out to. And that's why you've had to watch him really become, what everybody likes to say, Superman, because that's how the Bills win. They don't have the talent right now elsewhere around him in order to make his life easier. He's going to have to play lights out for the Bills to win.
Yeah, he's got to play that hero ball and put it all in his hands. And the thing is, he's got the hell of a cannon, but then he don't make those crazy runs. You're like, okay, you're 6'5", you don't need to be trying to hurdle over somebody.
Well, that's the other thing. They've been running him a lot more with Brady too, for whatever reason. And it's back to the common sense thing. I agree with you. He can't keep running over guys or running on top of guys because, like we talked about a little bit earlier with the backup quarterback situation, knock on wood, he plays like a wrecking ball and has somehow never been hurt. And I don't know how. It's remarkable. But you got to wonder how many times you can go back to the well before it's dry. And I'd rather him just stop going to the well. But there's a difference between running into a guy full force in the middle of the field and stopping running altogether. He is way too dynamic of a runner and athlete to take that away. And they did that early in the year. And I think it got into his head a little bit where he was kind of thinking to himself, I shouldn't be running this and that. And I think he was just all out of whack. If you've noticed ever since Dorsey's left, he's also just been playing a lot more free flowing, a lot more worry free. And it's pretty ironic because they've had way more to lose since then. Every game for the most part has been like a playoff game, but the tighter he plays, the worse they are. And lately he's been playing about as loosely as you can get without getting too wacko like he can sometimes week 1. So we hope it just stays that way. At the very least, a median. It's really hard to find a median with him. He's either the best quarterback on the field any given weekend, or you're watching, you're just like, oh my God, Josh, how the hell did you throw that ball? But luckily for us, it's been a lot more of the good than the bad. But early in this year, there was certainly a good amount of bad.
Yeah, he's one of those quarterbacks you kind of had to let him free flow, even though it may give you a heart attack. But that is the way he plays. He's not the stationary quarterback that sit in the pocket and just throw it because you're not going to get the best out of him.
And don't get me wrong, I love that. It's just that you got to do it like we keep going back to in a way that makes sense. And lately they've been doing that. Earlier in the year, everything they were doing for the most part just felt, not only did it feel forced, but it just felt like everything was hard. And lately they just seem to be doing the things that were easy. I almost feel like Joe Brady came in and said, it's not that hard. Let's stop doing certain things and just do the easy things. That's just what it seems like. It almost feels like anybody could have went in there. And it's not to take away credit from him because somebody had to do it. And I also think that he's come up with a few play designs like you talked about earlier, that wheel route for Cook, where they had nothing like that before. But it was almost like they just needed somebody to come in and say, hey, Josh, just do what you got to do, and the rest of you follow suit. And I think that's exactly what's happened.
They just kept it simple and like, okay, we got these guys on here. Let's not overthinking and try to invent the wheel. We got these players to utilize. But I got one last question for you. Like, what are your 3 keys to the victory against the Cowboys? What do you think the Bills need to do?
Wow, that's a good one because there's a lot, I think, going into this game. And for starters, I think it's going to be a great game. I don't see how it can't be. Right now, you got a lot riding on it in a variety of factors, which makes it great. One, you got each team coming off probably their biggest win of the year against what would be both of their arch rivals right now, which I think is awesome. And I don't know how you feel. I always hate playing a team after they lost either a really close game against the team that they're always battling with or they got smoked. I hate that. I'd much rather it be this situation where they're almost coming off the identical platform, and it makes it feel like it's that much more of an even playing field. So you have that. Obviously, Dallas fighting for potentially the 1 seed, certainly fighting for the first place in the NFC East. And then obviously the Bills with Miami losing to Tennessee the other night, which was insane. The AFC East is wide open. So these guys are battling for a lot of similar things this weekend. And I think right now, if I had to pick 3 things that it comes down to just how this particular game plays out, I think the one thing I look at for the defense going against Dak would be to try and take advantage of the one area where the Dallas Cowboys have seemed to struggle a bit offensively recently, and that's protecting him. He has been getting hit, but it hasn't necessarily affected his game. He's not turning the ball over. He's playing MVP caliber ball. And I just don't think the way he's throwing it right now that you're going to be picking him off left and right, or you're going to be taking away CeeDee Lamb or Ferguson or the rest of these guys who have just been eating up yards with the way Dak's been throwing the ball lately. I think the best chance the Bills have in being able to really mitigate an offense that has been absolutely on fire this year is just doing their best to get after him. Now, last week, I think Philly got after him a bunch, but it didn't matter. At the same time, Philly offensively couldn't do anything, and you just have to wonder if their defense fizzled out. But defensively, especially with the banged up secondary the Bills have, getting after him is their best chance in order to slow down the offense to some degree. I think offensively for Buffalo, there's no stopping Micah Parsons, and there's absolutely no way you're going to be able to completely eliminate that pass rush, which is, I think, still ranked number 1 in the league right now as far as pass rate is concerned. What they have to do is find a way to overcome what they didn't do last week against Kansas City. I don't know if you noticed, but in that second half, when, Buffalo gets off to a 14-point lead early in the first half, and they only take a 7-point lead to half, so they only go into the second half up a score. In the second half, the Chiefs blitzed almost exclusively, and the Bills had no answer for it, which is why they only scored 3 points in the second half. I hope for them they take a look at what the Chiefs did last week, because Chris Jones, to some capacity, you can look at him the way you look at Parsons and say, obviously 2 different players, but each team has a guy where you're going to have to dedicate half the line to him. So you're going to need to be prepared to be, under pressure all game long. I hope they were able to look at that and figure out a way to beat this blitz, because there's no way you're taking it away from the game at all. Allen has been protected really well this year, hasn't been sacked much at all, and the line's been playing better than ever. But last week against the Chiefs in the second half was about as bad as that line has looked all year. So I'm thinking the key for the Bills offensively this weekend, do not have a repeat of that second half last week